Good morning, and you're very welcome to this morning's live. Now, this morning we're going to be chatting about outdoor lighting. Apart from today, the weather has been lovely, so all of us are spending more time out in our gardens. So lighting them, many people have created outdoor kitchens, barbecue areas, new patios, new seating areas. I mean, the outside has really become an extension of our living space, so lighting them is now more important than ever. But it's not only in the warm months of the year that lighting is important, it's also throughout the year, because really, when you're sitting in your living space looking out onto your garden, when it's lit, particularly in the darker months of the year, it's just such a beautiful feature. Lighting trees, lighting planting, highlighting beautiful features in the garden, and, highlighting the building itself. So lots to think about. You've sent in some really good questions, which we'll go through. And I'm delighted that Willie Duggan Jr. is going to be joining me this morning to chat about all things lighting. So he's such an expert. But really, we're just going to be honing in on the exterior. And we won't forget about the front gardens either. So I see Willie waiting now. Focus is so often on the back garden, and the front sort of gets a little bit neglected. But we're going to be talking about that too, because it's great in terms of... Hi, Willie.
Denise, hi. How are you
Good
doing?
morning. Good, good. No, I was just saying that we often forget about the poor front garden. The back garden gets all the attention and all
Yeah,
the
well, this is it.
the investment.
Yeah,
But yeah, the front's important too, from making your home feel welcoming, from a safety perspective, security, so many things to think about. So yeah, so we've lots to chat about this morning.
yeah, like your front garden is, no, definitely, Denise, yeah, like your front garden is your first impression, isn't it,
Definitely,
And
yes.
particularly at night time, if you can sort of, if you can approach it right and sort of light sort of subtly, and you can really sort of highlight key features on your facade and that type of thing. So, yeah, I would say, yeah, don't forget your front garden anyway. That's what everyone's going to see first.
Yeah, definitely. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like I've had Leonie Cornelius, the garden designer, on a number of times. And what Leonie always recommends is sort of treat your front garden almost like a little teaser for what the back garden is going to be like. So, and I think that's a
yeah,
lovely idea, so you're sort of bringing elements from the back, because it does get so much attention, it really does get all the thought and the planning and the investment. So just little
yeah.
elements and sort of bring them into the front garden, I think is a really nice idea.
Well, no, definitely. Well, like obviously, like the back garden is probably where you spend an awful lot of time, so it's totally understandable why people would, spend, maybe consider that first. But no,
Yeah.
I would be completely on the same page. It's sort
Mm.
of, you're treating visitors to your home as, this is their first impression, and this is your opportunity to really create a nice ambience for people, entering your home and that, So it's
Definitely, yeah,
definitely worth thinking about as well.
for sure. No, absolutely. Brilliant. Well, look, Willie, I was saying in the intro that like our outdoor spaces have become everything to us over the last 18 months, from entertaining, from getting a break from what's going on in the house. So people have really invested in them. There's been outdoor kitchens, barbecue areas, fire pits, patios, you name it. People have gone mad and really embraced the idea of outdoor living. Do you think that has had, or what kind of impact has that had on the way people approach lighting for their gardens now?
Yeah, like look, I think it's one of the great things that's come out of this pandemic is that this outdoor living. I think it's fantastic, and I suppose look in terms of what we've seen, there's definitely a lot more awareness on lighting.
Hmm.
We've had a lot,
Yeah,
lot more requests in terms of garden lighting design and that. Because
great.
people, I suppose, are spending so much time in their gardens and outdoors that they really sort of see the value, I suppose, in investing in creating
Mm,
that ambience at night time as well. Like the
mm.
principles, I suppose, stay the same in terms of how we would approach it, but definitely there's much more awareness, and I think that's great because it's sort of, if you can consider these things early, you can plan early. You could there's so much you can do. It's just about a little bit of thought, a little bit of planning, and that type of thing. But yeah, the awareness will be the big thing I've seen change in the last year. I suppose it's sort of definitely people sort of are asking a lot more questions, which is great. I suppose.
Yeah, and I suppose taking their attention outside and planning lighting outside, because again, I was saying in the intro, it's not just in the summertime. I was chatting to somebody who sells furniture yesterday, and he was sort of saying the outdoor furniture, it sort of sells for 2 months of the year, and then that is it, literally in Ireland, you know. So, but with lighting, it is all year round, because even in the darkest and coldest months of the year, you're looking out onto your garden from your living space often. So if it's beautifully lit, just the atmosphere is completely different than looking out onto black glass, for example, if you've a lot of glazing at the back of the house. So it's a really transformative tool, and so worth considering and trying to get right.
Yeah, like if look, God, our winters are so dark, aren't they? You know, we're dark
Yeah,
at 4 o'clock
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
So like, even it's probably even more important in the winter. You know, for a
Hmm.
number of different reasons. Like it definitely, there's definitely that dynamic between inside and outside. You
Yeah.
know, and that's like feeling it. Well, two aspects to that, I suppose. Like you were chatting about, just mentioned there about the dark glazing and that. And if we can
Mm.
light our gardens well, we draw our eye out through the window, and your focus is drawn through, so that it does certainly cut down reflections and glazing and that type of thing. But
Hmm.
also just for feeling of safety. If your garden feels like a dark hole, it doesn't feel particularly, it just doesn't feel particularly inviting. Feels not quite as safe, maybe in some ways. So
Yeah,
there is
yeah,
that
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
that sort of feeling for people. It's
yeah,
once we can, like there's been lots of studies on them. Once we can observe or see our environment quite well at night time, we tend to feel a hell of a lot more safe and tend to use the space a lot more. But if we can't, if we don't have good lighting and we can't see our outdoor spaces, our public realm spaces, then
yeah.
people tend to not use them so much. So yeah, there's definitely
Mm.
that aspect as well.
No, fascinating.
Um,
And it is something that we would encounter, well, you know, when we're renovating people's homes, and everybody wants that sort of really seamless connection between inside and outside. But then the flip side is a lot of people don't want all that glass. They feel a bit uncomfortable. And it is to do with that sort of being surrounded with that black glass, with the reflection, not being able
yeah,
to see outside. So
yeah.
that's a really good point. Yeah.
Well, like there's
Perfect.
so much, like,
Mm.
I'm a total, fan of blazing, because I think natural daylight is the best type of light you can get, and it's
Yeah,
so good
yeah.
for your health. So
Mm.
like these new glazed interiors are fantastic, but we do have to consider nighttime, and the lighting has a crucial play in that. Like it's really, it does. If we can light it correctly, we just draw our eye out through the glazing, and your outdoors still nearly becomes indoor a little bit at nighttime as well, and then
Yeah,
the space feels more comfortable. So
yeah.
yeah, no, there's
Wonderful.
a bit to think about. Yeah,
Brilliant, brilliant. So, okay, so for people, because we've had lots and lots of questions, and it's a real mix of some people retrofitting, but others are sort of starting from scratch. So, if, say, for example, you're starting, you have a blank canvas, what's your advice for somebody starting? How should they go about planning exterior lighting? Because I
yeah,
know when you do the interior, it's about your furniture layout and, you know, all of that. So, when it
yeah.
comes to the garden, what's your advice?
Well, it's sort of, it's the principles are similar.
Yeah.
Interior, exterior. Like, it's trying to understand how you're going to use the space first of all. Like is there a barbecue area? Is there an area where you're going to be relaxing? Is there
Mm,
pathway areas that you want to light up from wayfinding point of view? So
mm,
it's nearly, before you even consider the lighting, you need to really consider how you're going to use the space. And
yeah.
so the first thing will be how you're going to use the space. Second thing will be how do you want the space to feel. So we often talk with interior. I know we chatted here before about how you can create different atmospheres in
Yes.
interior space,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's all about color temperature,
Yeah.
and sort of creating certain atmospheres. But you can ask yourself that same question in your garden: how do I want it to feel? Do I want it to feel fresh or just warm and and,
Mm,
and inviting? So those would be the first two things like we would look at, and then I think that the next thing that I think everybody should consider, just key features in their garden. And there's so much in gardens.
mm,
Like I just
mm,
think,
mm.
like for us in light and design, it's all about playing with textures and all about playing with materials and that. And then in your garden, you've got between the likes of stone walls, texture stone walls, the likes of your trees and your shrubs. There's just so much to like. So it's really trying to consider, what are the key features that you want to highlight.
Yeah.
Um, you were chatting about the front garden, and even like with your facade, it's a similar thing. Like when we
Mm.
light at night time, we can decide where people look. We really influence where people look. So you,
Yes.
you can decide
Yeah.
what part of your house you
Yeah.
want, or your home you um, want to show
Try.
at night time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have that
Yeah.
choice in the day.
No, no,
But
no. It's so true. You can kind of hide just make all that
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
disappear and really highlight the features that you like. Isn't that great?
yeah,
Yeah, amazing.
yeah. And I just
Brilliant.
think that's so powerful. Like
It is.
we often
Yeah,
say accent
yeah,
lighting is brilliant because there's a power to influence where people look. And when we can do that, it really gives us the power to highlight certain elements, that we
yeah.
feel are key features,
Yeah,
So
terrific way
yeah,
to think about it. You're dictating where people are going to look, where the eye is going to go, and
yeah,
that's a fabulous. I mean, if you're starting, that's it. That's your starting point. Where do you want the eye to be taken? When you're
yeah,
inside, when you're outside, and just think about all of that. That's brilliant, really brilliant
yeah.
advice.
It's like your facade, like the facade. Yeah, you're just
Mm,
deciding like what do I want people to look at? What are the key elements? What do I feel are, you know, it really stands out from my home when people are approaching,
mm,
the main facade. And it's the same in the garden. Like if like for wayfinding, or if you have a larger site or something,
mm.
lighting can be fantastic. But again, you influence where people look, and then people just naturally sort of move that direction. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, there's a lot
completely.
of power in it.
And Willie, you talk a lot, like, and we've spoken a lot about layers of light. So when you're designing for the interior and thinking about your light, it's about table lamps, it's about overhead lighting, pendant lights. So building up those layers. Is it the same in the garden, or can you go overboard and sort of overdo it? What's your advice there?
Yeah, yeah, like you can go overboard. Like
Yeah.
you can't light everything. If you light
Yes.
everything,
Yeah.
nothing really stands out. It just
Mm-hmm.
becomes too much of a, it's too much of a cluttered sort of
Mm.
um, base as such. But like the layers of light, philosophy, which we talk about building lighting in terms of layers. You look at task lighting, ambient lighting, accent lighting, decorative lighting. You can still approach it from that perspective for garden lighting. The thing is, you probably don't have as many layers. Like there's less task lighting in the garden. You might have it in certain areas, maybe if you're working a barbecue or something like that. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the time, you're looking at much lower light levels. But
Yeah.
it's sort of similar idea, I suppose. You're going to use a lot of accent lighting, and that's probably generally be one of your primary layers, and then maybe add task lighting if you need it afterwards. So you can work through that layered approach,
Mm-hmm.
but it's probably a little bit less of the functional and a little bit more of the sort of accent and ambient lighting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, like you've so many options now, even down to table and floor lamps that you can move around that are for outside, so you can
Yeah,
literally go completely mad. But I think you're right. I think you can overdo it outside because, outside is
yeah,
different. It's not like you need floodlights or anything to be able to see anything. It really is about highlighting and creating a nice ambience and atmosphere out there.
it is. Like it's like I'm a massive fan of hidden lighting. You don't really want to
Yes,
see the
yeah.
light. You quite often see it, and a mistake some people make, and it's just about like, yeah, the lights. If you can let the light source disappear and just highlight, let's say, the likes of uplighting trees, or
Yeah.
sort of textured wall surface, something fantastic. You can often see sometimes where you have lighting within the eaves of a roof and stuff, and then the fitting becomes more the focus rather than the light effect. So I think
Hmm.
definitely for garden lighting, the more subtle we can keep it, the better.
Yeah.
And there is so many options, like you said, in those portable fittings and that type of
Mm,
thing. But it's just
mm.
about just trying to keep it subtle. Obviously, giving you lighting where you need it, maybe possibly around your barbecue and relaxing areas and that type of thing. And then the rest of your garden can be the likes of wayfinding, or picking out sort of key features that provide a little bit of depth to your garden.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think you're right. Like those portable features, they're lovely if you're entertaining. They really are. They're
Yeah.
occasional lights, really. You'd sort of take them in most of the year, but the rest are the ones that you really want to plan, and they're all year round. So, no, I love that. I love
Yeah.
the idea of that sort of hidden lighting, that you're not drawing attention to the light fitting. It's more about accentuating the features and the things that you want to highlight, which is completely right when
Yeah.
you're looking at outdoor lighting. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then you probably covered a lot of this, but just to sort of
Yeah.
go over some of the mistakes you see people make and things that
Okay.
people should
Right.
avoid.
Yeah, well, I thought about the Eve, like with the lighting
Yeah.
of the Eve, I see that quite a bit, and it's just because, like, if you've got a little bit an overhang like that, I see that as a huge opportunity, because if you're uplighting, you get reflected light from the underside of your eaves, which can really frame your house and look
Mm.
fantastic. But if you downlight from it, you just look at the light source. You don't really, you don't really see the light effect because the light source is brighter than the effect on the building and such.
Okay.
So that would be one.
Okay.
The other one will be, like the quality maybe of fittings. You just need to be really careful in our climate. A lot of the fittings, there's a lot of fittings that maybe might be used on the continent, and they're less of an IP rating, IP43 or something like this. And so I will be using anything in Ireland really IP65, which is a really good, waterproofing or IP rating they call it. And just watch if you're by the seaside. Corrosion is a huge thing when you're by in coastal areas. So it's that, like it's a sort of false economy. Sort of, look, it depends on where you want to spend your money, but it's like by buying sort of maybe cheaper, less IP rated fittings in Ireland, they just don't tend to last. So
that's brilliant advice. So that IP rating is similar to what you'd put in a bathroom, basically, or a shower room, or anywhere that there's moisture.
Yeah, like in bathroom, there's certain considerations in terms of IP rating and that. You probably, what you'd be looking at outside will be the equivalent of what you will put in your shower. You know what I mean? Because it's going to be,
because it's going to be wet and rainy and
yeah. Whereas like on the continent, in the likes of Spain and Italy, they'll use IP43. They don't get quite the same rain as we do. But over here, like I wouldn't go less than IP65 because, just over time, it's, more likely than not going to cause problems.
To fail. So, and Willie, really important, because I guess over the last while, people have been buying things online and turning to online where there aren't people they can speak to and get this kind of advice, and particularly if they're buying from overseas, nobody will be there to advise them. So that's really good advice for people to look out for. And will all manufacturers list that? Like that's sort of something they'll be able to see.
Yeah, that's something that's written or that's listed on really every product, and it's just something to check. Like it'll be rated an outdoor fitting, and well, not rated, but it'll be probably called an outdoor fitting, But I would really check that IP rating because it's it might work in Italy and Spain, but we're
not here.
Unfortunately.
I know. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And then just choosing the types of fittings, like again, because we've talked so much about this, but the color temperature and mixing color temperatures, that's something I'm sure as well. And I used to see a lot, people would put colored lights in their garden, like green to make trees look greener. So what are your thoughts on all of that? What is the best color temperature to use outside? Or what are the rules of thumb that you should apply?
Yeah, like I love warmer color temperatures. I just find that they're just much more, they're designed like it's a much more relaxing light, and quite often in your garden, that's what you want. You're having a couple of glasses of wine after the barbecue or something, and it's nice and it's relaxed and it's low level. So like my preference would be warmer light. Like you can use cooler color temperatures. So warm color temperature would be, they measure in Kelvin, so it's the lower the number, the warmer it is, the more orange. So it'd be sort of 3,000 Kelvin or something. You could use 4,000, which is a little bit fresher, and can create a nice, it's just a different atmosphere. It's probably maybe might fit in maybe sometimes at more contemporary sort of outdoor areas. You quite often maybe might see it used in the likes of bars and stuff like that. But I think certainly for residential gardens, I prefer the warmer colour temperatures.
I think so too.
Yeah. I'd be nervous about the colour changing.
Yeah.
And it can be really sort of impactful if it's used very sort of. There's a lot of consideration to it, but it can look a little bit tacky if you use colour changing and are not careful about it, So it's just it's a great technology, but a little bit of care with it, I'd say,
Okay, brilliant. And just somebody asking for the IP rating there, Willie. So it's IP65.
IP65, yeah. IP65 for anything on your walls, like bollards, that type of thing. Like if you have something in ground, which we would quite often use, I think it's a great option in a garden because again, it's another form of hidden lighting. You don't really see the light source unless you were standing right above it, but you'd be looking at IP67, and it's the second number is the waterproofing. So that the bigger the number, the more waterproof it is. So if
Okay.
it was in water, it'd be I68. If it was in submerged in water, it'd be IP68. But in-ground fittings IP67,
Okay.
and anything on your walls, bollards or anything IP65.
Okay. That's fabulous. Great. Great. Thanks, Willie. And then, yeah, so you were just chatting about that. So you mentioned different kinds of fittings, but what are your tips for sort of accentuating different features? So if we maybe run around a few of them, like first of all, planting and maybe trees, what do you recommend there?
Yeah, like in-ground fittings, as I said, I just think they're a really good tool because, again, you don't see the light source and all the emphasis is on the likes of your tree, it's up lighting the canopy or whatever. So I would certainly think in-ground fittings are a great option for the likes of trees. For shrubbery and let's say in the garden areas, you could use in-ground fittings, but I nearly quite often will use a sort of little spike mounted,
Yes.
little
Yeah.
pot. It just gives you the ability as shrubbery changes or as it grows or whatever, or your flower bed sort of evolves, that you can actually change it. You can pick it up, place it somewhere else, and sort of create a different effect. Like your tree is always going to be in the same place, but your garden or your flower bed areas may evolve. So
Of course.
yeah, I
Yeah.
would say sort of spike lights in the likes of the garden areas, and then lighting trees is a great option.
Yeah. No, those spike lights are brilliant, and you can adjust the head and stuff. And as the planting in the summertime fills out, you can move them around because they do become
Yeah, this is
submerged
it.
in plants.
This is it.
And then
Yeah,
so no,
yeah.
they're really, and they're very inexpensive, really, aren't they? As well,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
they're good value. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's again with that, as I was saying, it's just about double checking the sort of the likes of the IP rating and stuff like that. But
Okay.
yeah, no, they are. They're good value. But and they're just for the likes of those flower beds, I think they just make sense because like you're
Yeah.
saying, it evolves, so you can change change it up.
Brilliant. And then what about things like, say, features on buildings or even, you know, putting them on the wall on the back of the house or whatever, those kind of features. What's your
In terms of
preference
wall
there?
lights, yeah. Like it's again, it depends. Like I think on obviously your front door is you were talking about first impressions, and we're talking
Mm,
about welcoming impression. And the front door I think is really important. Obviously there needs to be a focus on that to a certain degree, and I
mm-hmm,
think simple wall lights, with a nice color temperature and at the sort of the right height, you know,
mm,
um, um, just it's simple, but it works and it creates a nice ambience around your door.
mm-hmm,
Again, in-ground fittings can work really well in a facade because, particularly, like I think with lighting, texture and lighting work so well together.
yeah,
If you have a sort of a rendered main facade, I'd be a little bit careful lighting it with in-grounds because it will show up any imperfections in your plasterwork or something like that. But
mm-hmm,
if you have a
mm-hmm,
textured wall surface,
yeah,
texture stone or timber, like yeah, in-grounds can work fantastic because they create that light shadow and then highlight that texture. So
lovely.
that would be for facades. That would be for stone walls or stone features within your garden.
Mm-hmm,
Definitely, if you have overhangs, as I was saying, there's a real opportunity to be creating an illuminated surface, and so you can let's say frame your building or something like that, or frame your facade.
mm-hmm,
So yeah, again, it's sort of a lot of my like I really feel that the likes of it's the garden itself that needs to shine. It's the facade of your house that needs to shine. The lighting is just your tool to do that. You don't want to be
mm.
generally drawing attention to the light fitting
To
itself.
lights, yeah, exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly, yeah.
yeah.
No, that's great. And actually, we got just a question, somebody asking how to light a gazebo. Any
Yeah,
tips for that?
yeah. A gazebo, well, like it depends on the configuration of the gazebo, obviously. So, but like
Yeah.
festoon lighting, it can work really well. Like you see it quite often nowadays. But it's that lighting sort of the old incandescent style. A lot of them are LED bulbs
Mm,
or lamps these days. But on a sort of a cable, So
mm-hmm,
it again, if you get the right color temperature of festoon lighting, it just creates a really sort of a really nice feel to the likes of the underside of the gazebo. So I would
mm-hmm,
say festoons can work generally with most gazebo types. Again, there's options for hidden lighting in gazebos if you, depending on, again, the configuration, but you can integrate linear lighting, and that can work really, can be really quite smart if it's thought about, So,
Yeah. Lovely.
wall mounted fittings may work as well. Like, again, it depends on the style of space in the garden, but or the gazebo itself, but wall mounted fittings could be an option as well.
Yeah, lovely. And then somebody saying that I think they're retrofitting wall lights to two different sort of wall surfaces. One is going on a rendered wall and the other's on a concrete wall. And they're just concerned about the wires. They have to try and conceal them. So, yeah, possibly the render they're going to have to chase and repaint. But it is an up and down light. So is that just going to highlight the patchiness, or what would your tips be, Willie?
Yeah, like you'll have to chase that wall anyway, to see the cabling and that. That is a consideration with lights up and down lights. Anything that lights from an angle is going to highlight. It's going to create light shadow with any imperfections on the surface, which is brilliant, as I said, with texture. But if it's a flat, is it a rendered wall? They were saying, I think
they have two, so they must be going on two different types of walls. So the first one is a rendered wall, and then they're putting another one on a concrete wall.
Okay. The rendered wall I'd be nervous about. Concrete maybe not so much, but the rendered wall, if the rendering isn't really well done, you could just show that the any imperfections in it, So I would, if it was up to, I would nearly steer to maybe something just like a lantern type fitting or something that just gives a wash of sort of light, a pool of light, and it won't show up that any imperfections in the render. If the render is really well done, then far away.
Nothing to worry about. Yeah. Okay. No, it is important to think about what you're lighting, and like you said in the beginning, what do you want to show and what do you want to hide? Because you have the opportunity to do that. So don't be highlighting the stuff that doesn't look good.
That's exactly it. Just sort of, it's all about light and how it interacts with surfaces and that, So just be a little bit mindful of. It's like it's saying, because in construction, really don't they sort of measure twice, cut once, or whatever,
Exactly.
Just take your time. Just work through what you're trying to achieve, and understand it, and then it gives you clarity on what you're trying to do,
Yeah, sure. And then, Willie, you did share some images. Now, I can't share on Instagram as we're chatting anymore. I don't know why they got rid of that feature. It would be brilliant for this, because we could show what we're talking about. But I will share them afterwards in stories, just because there's some beautiful ideas there. But another question that came in, just somebody asking for recommendations for nice wall lights for a contemporary finished home. So any products you'd,
nice wall lights for a contemporary finished home. Well, we sort of we're distributing for LND, their Italian brand, and they have some beautiful. I'll do the same myself, Denise. Actually, I might just share those images on our own Instagram stories after this. I'll put up some of those L&D. They're really clean, beautiful quality now. Like the likes of L&D will come to me first, There is a lot of options in terms of contemporary wall mounted fittings these days. There's a lot of sort of I suppose the LED chip itself is getting smaller and smaller all the time, so it's allowing sort of lighting manufacturers to be more and more creative, But I'll share some of those for that person. I share some of them on our stories.
Thanks, Willie. Yeah, there's one that I love. I don't know who makes it. I think there's loads of versions of it, but basically it's like a disc, and it lights from behind. So you don't see the fitting. It just sort of, and it's really lovely. Something like that could be really striking too.
Yeah, loads actually do an outdoor fitting like that, and it's. Like again, that you're talking about light effect there. It's all indirect light, and that's what indirect light is beautiful, because it's so soft. You're not seeing the diodes. You're not
looking
getting
at
that
a bulb.
mark.
You
don't want to see a bulb. Like I think indoor, outdoor, I'd be very much on that philosophy. You don't want to be looking at the bulb. You just want to see that soft reflected light effect. So those, certainly I'd agree, Denise. Like that's a a really good option as well for a contemporary facade, something like that. But
Yeah.
I'll share that load fitting as well. That load
Yeah.
fitting as well. On that story.
Oh no, sounds amazing. But you're right. There's so many options. Like you literally could spend a day scrolling through. So yeah, so many options.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah, yeah,
Brilliant. And then finally, Willie, just the whole idea of flexibility. And again, this is something I chatted with Leonie about in terms of garden design. We've talked about it extensively to do with home design, but the need for all of the spaces that we inhabit to be flexible. So, even at the moment, as kids are growing, you need sort of space for them to play, and then they get a bit older and you want to transform the space into something else. What are your tips if people want to do something that they can sort of adapt and change over the years when it
yeah.
comes to
Like
the lighting?
yeah. Like again, it's sort of it's taking that time to plan it out,
Yeah,
and allowing sort of like certain elements are going to be fixed, and that's fine with the likes of your facade lighting and trees
mm,
and fixed elements of your garden. But having the flexibility with the likes of spike lights in your shrubbery areas, we quite often allow cable in our garden lighting design consoles. We'd allow cables in certain areas for the future, So
brilliant.
if you
Yeah,
needed to, um, first of all, have it, a little bit of consideration. Do I see any way that the garden might develop, but just you're always safer to leave a cable here or there so that you can add in the future if you wanted to.
yeah.
Outdoor sockets are great as well. Like this,
Hmm.
we haven't even chatted about outdoor illuminated furniture, which is a really sort of nice option in your garden. But a lot of that can be plug in and stuff like that. So outdoor sockets are certainly, having a number of
Yes,
those throughout your garden gives
that's
you
a
options.
brilliant tip. That is a really brilliant tip because again, like the festoon lighting that you mentioned, there's some fabulous ones, but they do need to be
Yeah,
plugged in. They're not solar mounted.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it does give
But
you
it
that.
gives you
That's
adaptability in the future. You can
absolutely,
plug in
yeah,
this outdoor
yeah.
furniture. You can plug in your festoon lighting or whatever,
Mm,
and you just have that adaptability.
mm, mm.
So yeah, I would definitely say that. Like we had talked about the like portable fittings. There's a lot more of those coming on the market now as well, which are great. And
Mm.
again, there's great styles, but these are sort of rechargeable fittings. So you bring them inside, you charge them up, and then you bring
And
them
pop them
outside and you go.
outside. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic.
So
Yeah, brilliant. And I
they're
love
very
the.
handy.
Oh, they are,
Yeah.
no, they're great, but they're
Well,
even handy for. I have a couple of them, and they're handy for around the house because they're really effective
yeah.
as lamps. Actually, they're
Okay.
great.
Completely. Yeah, like
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
that there is that if you're approaching your garden or you're starting your garden, um, yeah, you can plan and put cables in place. But if you just don't happen to have them, it's a good
yeah,
option to
yeah.
add a little bit of lighting, but it's something that you don't need to rewire or anything. You just buy the fitting, charge it up, and bring it out when you're using the garden.
Yeah, brilliant. And I
Yeah.
love the idea of the illuminated furniture. Wow. Maybe you'd share some of those images as well so people could
Yeah,
see.
I will.
Yeah.
I have one right behind me.
Have
I
you?
don't know.
Oh,
You see the balls there?
oh,
They're just illuminated
lovely.
balls. I've shared them with the Slide Italian company.
So lovely.
But
Yeah.
illuminated Slide do an awful lot of beautiful illuminated furniture, and it's a really nice feature. You can illuminated seating or illuminated tables. Again, you don't want to go crazy. Like it's a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
of if you try to light everything, it becomes a bit like a Christmas tree. But if you're smart about it, they're a lovely touch. They create a lovely atmosphere, and
Mm.
yeah, I'll share some of the slide stuff as well. It's the
No,
illuminated
good.
furniture.
Well, it's like light sculpture, they're there, and
It
particularly
is,
say that
yeah,
contemporary home, it could look really striking in a garden or,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
fabulous.
And then let's
Brilliant.
say there's square versions of what's behind me there. And
Mm.
like you talk about color temperatures, quite often see some of those in the cooler color temperatures. A little bit fresher, but again, it ties in with more of a contemporary feel. But
Mm.
yeah, no, they're great options. There's so many options, Denise. It's great,
No,
and it's
it's
just
very exciting.
trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
distill that down in terms of in terms of what works in your space or your garden.
Yeah, sure, sure. And then I see just one thing, don't forget Christmas lights. But that's what popped into my head as well about the outdoor socket, because we would get that from clients
Yeah,
who want a Christmas tree outside at Christmas time,
yeah,
to light up and have
yeah,
lights out in the garden or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's
yeah.
outdoor socket is
I'd
a
be
great tip.
yeah, yeah. I'd be sort of a number of sockets just gives you flexibility. So I would
Mm,
there's no harm. It
mm.
gives you that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, just for Christmas lights or anything else, you know.
Amazing. Willie, thank you so much. That's great.
Yeah,
So many fabulous ideas there, whether you want to wire in or just invest in some of these portable pieces. Like it's endless. It's endless how you can approach it, but really good tips. I think what is it you want to highlight? Forget about the bits you don't want to showcase, and plan for the future. I think that's great advice. Include the wiring, even if it's not something in the budget straight away, but it means you've got flexibility down the line. So, no, wonderful. Thank you so much.
no, listen, yeah, Denise, I love doing these. They're great. I get a kick out of them myself. So thanks for the opportunity to chat on your channel this morning. Like the key takeout, like for me, it's plan early. You know, if
Yeah,
you think about it
yeah.
early, and take your time. You know, just
hmm
really get it clear what you're trying to achieve,
hmm
and there's so much you can do. You know.
No, definitely. And great advice. Take your time. There's no rush. And I think that's the thing, especially now we've been sort of held back for so long and people are so impatient to get going, but really take your time because rushing into things
Yeah.
never works out well. So, yeah,
No,
plenty of
no,
time.
and
Yeah.
enjoy the process. It's enjoyable.
Exactly.
You
Yes,
know.
no, it is. It is.
Yeah,
And creating
yeah,
something and
yeah,
seeing how it
yeah, yeah,
evolves. So, yeah, no, for
yeah,
sure. But
yeah,
Willie, thank you
yeah,
so much. I hope the weather is better in
yeah.
Kilkenny than it is here today. It's absolutely
Yeah,
miserable. But
yeah, I was expecting a really like it was supposed to be such a nice last couple of weeks. Have been fantastic, and I
they
was
have, yeah.
expecting it was rain today. It's not raining now. I don't really mind as long as it's not bucketing down. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
at least yeah, it's okay so far. But
Good stuff.
yeah,
Good.
we'll see. You know.
Brilliant. All right. Well, listen, thank
Yeah,
you so much. Such a pleasure,
yeah.
as always,
Thanks
chatting
very
to
much.
you.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thanks, Willie.
Same to you.
Take
Yeah,
care,
thanks.
Willie.
See you, Denise.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.